The mining station Delta 7 floated in the darkness between two asteroid fields, where humans worked alongside dozens of alien species, extracting rare minerals that powered the galactic economy. Jake Miller was just another human engineer trying to make enough credits to send back to Earth when his life changed forever during a routine maintenance shift in the lower cargo bay. He was checking pressure valves when he heard a sound like wind chimes, mixed with tiny bells, and turned to see the most beautiful creature he had ever encountered standing in the doorway. She was tall and slender with pointed ears that marked her as one of the elder races, but her silver hair seemed to glow with its own light, and her eyes were the color of nebulas swirling with purple and gold. 3 small creatures sat on her shoulders, and Jake realized with shock that they were dragons, no bigger than cats, with scales that shifted from blue to green to gold as they moved. The elf woman walked into the cargo bay with movement so graceful she seemed to float, and the dragons chirped softly as they watched Jake with intelligent eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Jake had heard stories about the elves who ruled vast sections of the galaxy with technology so advanced it seemed like magic, but they rarely interacted with younger races like humans. She approached him without the usual alien caution, and when she spoke, her voice was like music, saying, "Hello. Human, I am Lily, and these are my companions." Starshimmer and Spark, the dragons, responded to their names by glowing brighter, and Jake noticed that each one had a unique pattern of colors that danced across their scales like living artwork. Jake introduced himself, stammering slightly, because he had never been this close to an elf before, and definitely never one who seemed genuinely interested in talking to him. Lily explained that she had come to the station to study how different species work together, and she found humans particularly fascinating because of their determination. Despite their physical limitations, they talked. Jake forgot about his maintenance duties and told her about Earth and how humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, while her people had been traveling the stars for millennia. The dragons seemed to understand everything being said, and occasionally made small sounds that Lily translated as questions about human culture and why they chose such dangerous jobs. Jake learned that the dragons were not pets but partners bonded to Lily since her childhood, on a world where the two species had evolved together in symbiosis for millions of years. She told him about forests of crystal trees where dragons nested and cities that floated in the clouds powered by harmony between technology and nature that humans could barely comprehend. When Jake asked why she was really on a mining station, Lily hesitated, then admitted her father had sent her to observe whether humans were worth including in a new alliance. The elder races were concerned about a threat from beyond the galaxy, and they needed to determine if younger species like humans could contribute anything meaningful to the defense. Jake felt embarrassed, knowing that humans were considered primitive by galactic standards with their basic ships and simple weapons, compared to the reality-bending technology of the elves. But Lily surprised him by saying she had already seen something in humans that impressed her, which was their ability to survive and thrive in conditions that would break other species. She had watched humans repair systems with improvised tools when proper equipment failed, and seen them risk their lives to save strangers, without calculating the odds of success first. The dragons suddenly became agitated, chirping loudly, and Lily looked up with concern, saying her father was approaching, and he was not pleased to find her in the lower levels. Jake heard heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor and felt the temperature drop as a massive figure appeared in the doorway, radiating power and authority. Commander Theron stood 7 feet tall, wearing armor that seemed to be made of compressed starlight, and his eyes were like lilies, but harder, holding the weight of centuries. He looked at Jake with an expression that could have frozen a sun, and asked his daughter in their musical language why she was wasting time with primitive species. Lily responded in the same language, but Jake could tell from her tone that she was defending him, and the dragons added their own chirps to whatever argument she was making. The commander switched to standard galactic speech and told Jake that humans were too young and reckless to be trusted with the responsibilities of the Alliance. Jake wanted to argue, but knew that speaking out of turn to an elf lord could get him expelled from the station, or worse, so he remained silent and tried not to show fear. Lily stepped between them and told her father that he was wrong about humans and that their potential was greater than anyone realized, if given the proper chance. The tension in the cargo bay was so thick that other workers had stopped to stare, but nobody dared to interfere with an argument between elves. Commander Theron looked at his daughter with something that might have been disappointment or pride, then turned his attention back to Jake, studying him like a specimen. He asked Jake directly what humans could possibly offer that the elder races did not already possess in abundance with their advanced technology and centuries of experience. Jake thought carefully, then said that humans offered perspective from outside the established order and the willingness to try solutions that older races might dismiss as impossible. The commander made a sound that might have been a laugh or a scoff and said that ignorance was not the same as innovation. But Lily argued that sometimes they were related. Reminded her father of how humans had solved the Proxima crisis by doing something no elder race would have considered, which was manually flying a damaged ship into a collapsing star. The dragons had been watching the entire exchange, and now Star, the blue one, flew over to land on Jake's shoulder, chirping softly as if offering support. Commander Theron seemed surprised when Star chose to perch on Jake, and his expression shifted from dismissive to curious, as dragons were known for their ability to sense character. The tiny dragon nuzzled against Jake's neck, making purring sounds, while its scales shifted to a warm golden color that Lily said indicated trust and affection. Her father observed this for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything, telling Jake he had 1 week to prove humans were worthy of consideration. The test would be simple in concept but nearly impossible in execution, as Jake would need to solve a problem that had stumped the elder races for decades. In the asteroid field nearby was an ancient derelict ship from a civilization that had vanished long before even the elves achieved spaceflight, and it contained valuable technology. Many species had tried to board the ship, but its defenses were still active, using energy fields that adapted to any attempt to breach them, making entry impossible. Commander Theron said if Jake could find a way inside using human ingenuity rather than advanced technology, he would consider supporting humans for the Alliance. Lily started to protest that this was unfair, but her father silenced her with a gesture, saying that desperate times required proof of exceptional ability, not just potential. Jake accepted the challenge, even though he knew it was probably impossible because refusing would confirm every negative belief the elder races had about human inadequacy. The commander left as suddenly as he had arrived, but Lily remained behind with her dragons, who were now all glowing with agitation, sensing their partner's distress. She apologized for her father's harsh test, saying he had become harder since the threat from beyond the galaxy had been detected, though she could not share details. Jake asked what kind of threat could worry beings as powerful as the elves, but Lily only said it was something that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind. Over the next day, Jake researched everything available about the derelict ship, learning that 17 different species had attempted entry, using increasingly powerful technology. The elves had tried to phase through the hull, the crystalline beings had attempted to hack its systems, and the warrior races had used their strongest weapons, all failing. Jake realized that everyone had approached the problem with force or technology. But what if the solution required something completely different from either approach? He gathered a team of human volunteers from the station, including Amy Chen from maintenance, Brad Cooper from life support, and Katie Adams from communications. When Jake explained the challenge, they all thought he was crazy but agreed to help, because the chance to prove humanity deserved respect was worth any risk. Lily visited them as they planned, bringing food from her ship and letting her dragons play with the humans, who were delighted by the little creatures' antics. She could not directly help, but she shared stories of her people's failures, suggesting that the ship seemed to respond differently each time, as if learning from attempts. Katie suggested that maybe the ship was not just defended but was actually intelligent in some way, still following protocols from its long-dead creators. Brad wondered if instead of trying to break in, they should try communicating with it, but previous attempts at sending signals had produced no response. Amy had the strangest idea, suggesting they approach it not as invaders or explorers, but as guests requesting permission to enter rather than demanding access. The team spent 3 days preparing their attempt, while other species on the station placed bets on how quickly the humans would fail. Like all others, Commander Theron returned to observe from the station's command center, making it clear that he expected this to be a lesson in human limitations. Jake and his team took a small shuttle to the derelict, which hung in space like a massive metal tomb, covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a city, with hull plating that seemed to shift and move as if it was somehow alive despite being thousands of years old. As they approached, the defensive fields activated, creating a barrier of pure energy that had destroyed dozens of probes and killed several explorers who got too close. Instead of trying to push through, Jake had the shuttle stop just outside the field, and Katie began broadcasting a simple message on every frequency they could generate. The message was not a demand or even a request, but simply a greeting, identifying themselves as humans and expressing curiosity about the ship's creators and history. For an hour nothing happened, and Jake could feel Commander Theron watching from the station, probably already composing his dismissal of human efforts. Then Amy suggested they try something no advanced race would consider, and she began broadcasting human music, starting with simple melodies from Earth. The defensive field flickered, and Brad quickly added his own contribution, sending mathematical sequences that were not weapons calculations but the Fibonacci sequence and prime numbers. Katie transmitted images of Earth showing oceans and forests and cities, while Jake added star charts showing the path humanity had taken to reach the stars. The combination of art science and simple communication seemed to confuse the ship's defenses, which had been programmed to respond to threats, not gestures of friendship. Slowly, the energy field began to pulse in rhythm with the music, and then incredibly, a section of the field opened just wide enough for their shuttle. Lily was watching from the station and later told Jake that her father's expression went from smugness to complete shock as the humans achieved what nobody else could. The team carefully piloted their shuttle through the opening, which closed behind them, and they found themselves in a hangar that looked almost welcoming. The walls began glowing with soft light, and symbols appeared that Katie recognized as pictographs, showing the ship responding to their peaceful approach. They explored carefully, finding no bodies but discovering technology that was both ancient and impossibly advanced, including star charts showing galaxies nobody had ever seen. In the central chamber, they found a message left by the builders explaining that the ship would only open for species that approached with curiosity rather than greed. The builders had disappeared, pursuing something they called the Great Journey, but they left their knowledge for whoever could prove they sought understanding, not power. Jake and his team spent hours documenting everything before returning to the station, with proof that humans had succeeded where everyone else had failed. Commander Theron stood waiting in the docking bay when Jake and his team returned, and his expression was unreadable as they emerged from their shuttle carrying data tablets. The entire station had watched their success, and aliens of every species had gathered to see what the humans had discovered inside the ancient ship. Jake presented the data to the commander, who reviewed it in silence, while Lily stood beside him with her dragons glowing bright gold with excitement. The information contained star maps to resource-rich systems, blueprints for medical technology that could cure diseases plaguing several species, and most importantly, defensive strategies. Commander Theron finally spoke, saying the humans had not just succeeded, but had discovered why the ship had remained sealed for so long, waiting for the right species. The builders had been testing for empathy and creativity rather than power, because they believed these traits were necessary to face the darkness they had fled from. When Jake asked what darkness they meant, the commander exchanged a look with Lily before deciding to share the truth about the threat facing the galaxy beyond the galactic edge. Something was approaching that consumed energy and matter, leaving only void, and it had already devoured 3 satellite galaxies. The elder races had been secretly preparing for war, but their traditional weapons and shields were useless against an enemy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. They needed new perspectives and approaches, which was why Lily had been sent to evaluate whether younger races might offer solutions the elder races could not see. Jake realized this test had never really been about humans proving their worth, but about finding species capable of thinking differently enough to face an impossible enemy. The commander admitted that dozens of elder race teams had failed the derelict ship test because they approached it with assumptions based on their advanced understanding. Humans succeeded precisely because they did not assume they knew better than the ship's creators, and instead approached with humility and genuine curiosity about others. Lily stepped forward and told her father that humans had also shown something else important, which was the ability to work together despite individual weaknesses. She had observed how Jake relied on his team's different skills, rather than trying to solve everything himself, which was rare among species that valued individual achievement. The dragons flew around the hangar chirping excitedly as Commander Theron made an announcement that shocked everyone present, including his daughter. Not only would humans be included in the alliance, but Jake and his team would be given positions on the joint task force preparing for the approaching threat. Would work with the science division studying the ancient technology. Brad would join the engineering corps, and Katie would help establish communication protocols. Jake himself would serve as liaison between humans and elder races, a position that came with responsibilities he could barely comprehend, but also incredible opportunities. Over the following weeks, the station transformed as elder race ships arrived, bringing technology and knowledge to share with the humans who had proven themselves. Jake spent most of his time with Lily learning about the alliance and discovering that the dragons were even more remarkable than he had imagined. Star had essentially adopted him, visiting every day and teaching him through images and emotions how to understand their form of communication. Shimmer and Spark remained primarily bonded to Lily, but they also accepted Jake as part of their expanded family unit, which was extremely rare. Lily explained that dragons chose their bonds based on compatible souls, and Star saw something in Jake that resonated with its own nature. The peaceful period ended when long-range sensors detected the first probe from the approaching threat, a sphere of absolute darkness that absorbed everything. It moved slowly but inevitably toward the galaxy, and every scan revealed nothing but an absence where matter and energy simply ceased to exist. Commander Theron called a meeting of all species on the station, showing them the data and explaining that they had perhaps 50 years before it reached inhabited systems. The elder races had weapons that could destroy stars, but nothing that could affect something that seemed to exist as a negation of existence itself. Jake suggested that maybe they were approaching the problem wrong, just like everyone had with the derelict ship, by assuming it followed rules they understood. What if the threat was not attacking but was simply existing in a way that was incompatible with normal matter like antimatter, but more fundamental? Katie proposed trying to communicate with it, though. Everyone thought this was insane, given that it showed no signs of intelligence, just consumption. Brad wondered if they could create a barrier using the ancient technology, but modified with human industrial techniques that favored redundancy over elegance. Amy had been studying the records from the derelict ship and found references to the builders encountering something similar which they had not fought but avoided. The strategy meeting continued for hours, with elder races dismissing most human suggestions as too simple or based on incomplete understanding of physics. But Lily supported every idea, saying that sometimes simple solutions worked precisely because they did not rely on complex assumptions that might be wrong. Her father observed silently until Jake made a suggestion that caused everyone to stop and stare at him in either horror or amazement. He proposed that instead of fighting or fleeing, they should send a ship directly into the anomaly, with volunteers to study it from inside. The elder races immediately declared this suicide, but Jake argued that they needed information, and the only way to get it was direct observation. Several humans volunteered immediately, including his entire team, which made the elder races reconsider their assessment of human courage versus human insanity. Commander Theron said he would consider the proposal, but would not order anyone on such a mission, though he admitted it might be their only chance. That night, Lily found Jake in the observation deck watching the stars, with Star curled up on his lap, purring like a small musical instrument. She sat beside him and asked if he really intended to fly into something that erased existence itself, just to gather information for others. Jake said humans had always been explorers willing to risk everything to understand the unknown, and this was just the largest unknown they had encountered. Lily touched his hand and said he was either the bravest or most foolish human she had met. But either way, she would make sure he had the best ship possible. The ship Lily provided was beyond anything Jake had imagined, combining elder race technology with modifications suggested by human engineers who thought differently about design. It was small enough to be agile, but equipped with sensors that could detect quantum fluctuations and shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Amy, Brad, and Katie insisted on joining the mission, despite Jake trying to convince them to stay safe on the station with the other humans. Commander Theron surprised everyone by announcing he would personally oversee the mission from a support ship, saying no. Leaders should send others where they would not go. Lily wanted to come too, but her father forbade it, saying she was needed to coordinate the alliance if the mission failed and they did not return. The dragons, however, had other ideas, and Star absolutely refused to leave Jake, while Shimmer and Spark would not abandon their sister. After much argument, it was decided the dragons could come, as their unique perception might detect things that technology and human senses would miss. The journey to the anomaly took 3 weeks, during which Jake and his team trained with elder race instructors, learning to use equipment beyond human technology. Katie discovered she had a natural talent for quantum communication systems, while Brad somehow intuited how the multidimensional shields functioned. Amy spent her time studying the patterns of the anomaly's movement, finding rhythms that suggested it was not random but following some incomprehensible purpose. Jake worked with Star, learning to understand the dragon's empathic communication, which revealed layers of reality humans normally could not perceive as they approached the anomaly. The cheerful atmosphere on the ship gradually faded, replaced by a creeping dread that seemed to come from space itself. The anomaly was visible now, not as something dark, but as an absence where stars simply ended and space itself seemed to curve away from existence. Commander Theron maintained position at what they calculated was the minimum safe distance, while Jake's ship prepared for the final approach. Lily sent a message saying she was proud of them, and that whatever happened, they had already changed how the galaxy saw humanity forever. Jake responded by saying they would come back with answers because humans were too stubborn to let something like non-existence stop them from completing a mission. The team made final preparations, with Brad checking every system 3 times while Amy calculated approach vectors and Katie established emergency communication protocols. The dragons huddled together, glowing in patterns nobody had seen before, as if they were preparing for something beyond normal experiences. They crossed the threshold. Jake expected to feel something dramatic, but instead there was just a subtle shift, like walking from sunlight into shade. Inside the anomaly, space worked differently, with direction and distance becoming suggestions rather than facts, and time flowing in spirals rather than straight lines. The sensors showed impossible readings that the computer could not process, but somehow the human brain could interpret as patterns within chaos. Amy realized first that they were not in a void, but in a space where matter existed in a different state, neither energy nor particle, but something between. Brad discovered the shields were not protecting them, but translating them, allowing them to exist in this strange space without being unmade. Katie managed to establish communication with the support ship, though the signal arrived before she sent it, causing temporal paradoxes. The equipment ignored. The dragons began singing a harmony Jake had never heard before, and their scales showed colors that should not exist, but somehow did, moving deeper into the anomaly. They found structures that were not built, but grown from crystallized space-time itself, forming impossible geometric patterns. These structures contained information, encoded in the fabric of reality itself, and Amy began decoding it, with the dragons somehow helping her understand. What they found changed everything, because the anomaly was not a threat, but a doorway created by beings who had transcended physical existence eons ago. These beings had evolved beyond matter and energy, but left the anomaly as a test for younger species to see if they were ready for the next stage. The test was not about technology or power, but about the ability to perceive existence differently and work together across species boundaries. Jake realized the builders of the derelict ship had discovered this truth and chosen to enter the anomaly voluntarily, becoming part of something greater. The team gathered as much information as possible before carefully withdrawing, as staying too long risked losing their connection to normal space. The journey back felt longer than the approach, as if the anomaly was reluctant to let them go, but eventually they emerged into normal space. Commander Theron was visibly relieved when they returned and immediately began analyzing the data they had collected with the best minds of the Alliance. The discovery that the anomaly was not hostile but transformative created massive debates among the elder races about how to proceed. Some wanted to enter immediately seeking transcendence, while others feared losing their physical existence and cultural identity to something unknowable. Humans typically suggested a middle path, proposing to establish a research station near the anomaly to study it gradually while maintaining their current existence. Jake found himself at the center of these discussions as the only team to successfully return with coherent information from inside the anomaly. Lily spent every free moment with him, learning about the experience and trying to understand how humans processed such impossible information. She said humans might be uniquely suited to this discovery because they had not existed long enough to become rigid in their thinking about reality. The dragons had been changed by the experience and could now show others glimpses of what existed beyond through their emotional projection abilities. Star would sit with different species, sharing visions that helped them understand that the anomaly was not death but transformation into something different. As weeks passed, the Alliance began developing protocols for studying the anomaly, with humans taking the lead due to their successful first contact. Jake was offered command of the research station, but requested that it be a joint operation with representatives from every alliance. Species Commander Theron supported this decision, saying that if transcendence was the goal, then all species should walk that path together as equals. The announcement of the anomaly's true nature sent waves throughout the galaxy, with some species celebrating, while others withdrew in fear of change. The research station was completed in just 6 months, combining the best technology from every Alliance species with human practical design. Philosophy. Jake stood in the command center, watching the anomaly pulse with patterns that still defied complete understanding despite months of study. Lily had been assigned as the elder race representative, working directly with him, which made their growing relationship both easier and more complicated. Her father had initially opposed this, but changed his mind after Star Shimmer and Spark made it clear they would not be separated from either of them. The dragons had become something like ambassadors, helping different species understand the anomaly through their unique ability to project emotional understanding. More humans arrived weekly, volunteering for dangerous research missions that elder races considered too risky, but humans called Tuesday afternoon adventures. Amy led a team developing translation algorithms for the information structures inside the anomaly, which revealed histories of civilizations millions of years old. Brad worked on modifying ships to spend longer periods inside the anomaly without losing cohesion in normal space. When they returned, Katie established a communication network that somehow functioned across dimensional boundaries, allowing real-time contact with exploration teams. The breakthrough came when Jake and Lily took a small team, including the dragons, deep into the anomaly. Following patterns Amy had decoded, they found what could only be described as a library, though it existed in thoughts rather than books or data, containing the experiences of transcended beings. These beings had not abandoned physical existence, but expanded beyond it, becoming conscious patterns in the quantum foam that underlies reality. They could still interact with normal matter, but experience time and space as artistic mediums rather than constraints on their existence. The message they had left was simple enough that any species reaching this point could understand it, despite its profound implications. Evolution did not end with biology or technology, but continued into forms of existence that younger species could not yet imagine, but would eventually achieve. The anomaly was just one of many doorways left throughout the universe for species ready to take the next step in their development. But the choice to transcend was not mandatory, and many civilizations had chosen to remain physical, serving as guides. For younger species, Jake and his team brought this information back, sparking the greatest philosophical debate in galactic history about the nature of existence itself. Some elder races immediately began preparing for transcendence, while others declared their intention to remain physical regardless of the opportunity. Humans characteristically decided that some would explore transcendence, while others would stay behind to help guide future species who reached this point. Commander Theron announced that the elves would take a gradual approach, studying transcendence for generations before making any final decision. During a quiet moment in the observation lounge, Jake asked Lily what she wanted to do when the choice became real. She said that wherever humanity went, she would follow, because they had taught her that courage was not about being fearless, but about acting despite fear. The dragons interrupted their conversation with excited chirping as sensors detected something new approaching from the opposite direction of the anomaly. It was a ship, but unlike anything in their databases, seemingly made of crystallized light that bent space around it as it moved. The ship sent a single message in perfect galactic standard, saying they were transcended beings who had chosen to return to physical form. They had been watching the younger races approach the anomaly, and were impressed that humans had led the way with curiosity rather than fear. The beings identified themselves as the shepherds, explaining they had transcended millions of years ago but maintained physical avatars to guide others. They confirmed that the path to transcendence was different for every species, and humans were developing their own unique approach to evolution. What made humans special was not their technology or physical abilities, but their willingness to include others in their journey forward. The shepherds offered to share knowledge, but warned that each species must ultimately find their own way to transcendence or choose to remain. Jake was selected to be humanity's representative in discussions with the shepherds, a role that would have terrified him months ago. But with Lily beside him and the dragons perched on his shoulders, he felt ready to help guide humanity toward whatever future they chose. The meetings revealed that transcendence was not an ending, but a beginning of existence on scales humans could barely imagine yet. Some transcended beings became gardeners of galaxies, nurturing young civilizations while others explored dimensions beyond the physical universe entirely. The choice would not need to be made for generations, but knowing it existed changed how every species viewed their place in the cosmos. Humans began developing schools that taught both traditional knowledge and preparation for eventual transcendence. Should individuals choose that path, Jake and Lily established the first mixed species academy, where humans, elves, and others learned together about both physical and transcendent existence. The dragons became teachers, using their emotional projection to help students understand concepts that words and mathematics could not adequately express. Years passed, and the research station grew into a city where species worked together, studying the anomaly and learning from the shepherds. Jake and Lily performed what humans called marriage and elves called soul binding, creating the first formal human-elf partnership in galactic history. Commander Theron presided over the ceremony, admitting that his daughter had chosen well, and that humans had proven themselves beyond his greatest expectations. The dragons celebrated by creating a light show visible from 3 systems away that became an annual celebration of interspecies cooperation. As Jake stood with Lily watching new volunteers arrive to study the anomaly, he remembered her first words to him about being brave. He had grabbed what he thought was a crate but had actually seized a future where humans stood as equals among the stars. The story of humanity had just begun, and whether they chose transcendence or remained physical, they would face the future together with their allies. Star chirped softly, reminding Jake that bravery was not a single moment but a continuous choice to reach for something greater than yourself. Looking at the anomaly pulsing with infinite possibility, Jake knew that humans would keep reaching no matter where that journey led them.